over Tehran, and they have a video of a fighter jet. Is that really happening? That's what state media says. Wow. I'm looking at a video right now from Press TV, which is Iranian state media, of a residential building in Tehran, which has a huge amount of damage. A number of residential buildings attacked in Tehran in the first wave of strikes. I'll post some pictures in the chat for you from Iranian media. Thanks, by the way, to Ladina Mita. Ladina Mita, thank you. Faytux News mentioned that IDF Radio in Israel is reporting that a senior advisor to the supreme leader, Ali Shamkhani, has been targeted tonight. His condition is unclear. Oh, hold on.
The number of ways these things can present themselves is practically infinite. I mean, I've had really weird experiences with information. For instance, these flashers on buildings where the news goes by. I've had hallucinations where it became a textual hallucination. In other words, what I was seeing was an illuminated page of print. And then as I looked at it, every 50th letter would invert, and then suddenly every 20th, and then every 10th, and then every 5th. And I literally watch a page of text go from being readable to being gibberish, and then watch the meaning come through again in a loop. I mean, I think anything you can conceive of, it can do, and many things you can't conceive of.
That's the beauty of individual perception. I mean, we're all individuals. We all have the gift of bringing our own ideas.
But still, you have to be able to make general statements about it, or you would have to say that it's all and everything.
Exactly the same, it would be boring.
Well, although how would you know, since you would never have any trip but your own?
Right.
One of the things that happens on psilocybin and on ayahuasca that really puzzles me, that I just go back to again and again, is you can be having these volleys of hallucination, and then you can say to it, Art Deco, and click, And suddenly there will be thousands of cigarette lighters, limousines, candy dishes, stuff rolling in black space in front of you. Thousands of these things, perfectly exemplifying this very narrowly defined aesthetic domain. Italian Baroque. Click. Altarpieces, saints with their eyes rolled back, dripping gold, the whole thing. And so they say, boy, that is really strange. We click through aesthetic epochs like points on a dial, but then you can say to it, surprise me. And Baroque, not Empire, not dynastic Egypt, not North American Indian, Maya, or Fujiwara Japanese, but something never seen on this planet, but equally coherent as those other styles. And I always think, my God, if I could just grab hold of this, I would be Yves Saint Laurent or Klimt or somebody like that. The mushroom has a personality. And like all personalities, it excludes some things and includes others. The mushroom personality is a radically eccentric personality. The mushroom talks about transforming the planet. It says, I come from a distant part of the galaxy. I have 500 million years of galactic history in my data banks. I have seen 50,000 worlds come into existence and pass out of existence. I've seen ships the size of Australia depart for Andromeda. I've seen this, I've seen that. It's willing to show you the newsreels of it. That kind of and it says, your world is ending. Put your furry paw into my hand, and together we will march out to the stars. It's this dun, 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 dun. Well, so then you take a compound or a shamanic hallucinogen like ayahuasca. Chemically, this is very, very similar to DMT. Experientially, it could hardly be more different. Ayahuasca does not show you images of enormous machines in orbit around alien planets and that sort of thing. Ayahuasca, first of all, it doesn't speak. It shows. You become like the eye of a camera flying through a world. And what it shows you, it's much more feminine. It shows you water flowing over the land. It shows you plant life growing and dying. It shows you the movement of glaciers over the surface of the land. It shows you people burying their dead. It shows you archaic civilizations. It shows you women nursing their children. It shows you meat. It shows you the stuff of this world on every level. And it moves you to tears. I mean, it's emotive. It's not about our cosmic destiny out there in the starry blackness. It's about coming to terms with the earth and our past. I mean, I've seen states of group-mindedness that were so specific that there was no possibility that what was not happening was no shit, one-on-one, real-time telepathy. Take me to your leader. No, I did have one DMT trip way back, like maybe the second or third or fourth way back, where it was completely different. It's the only one I've ever had like that. And it was completely different. And the way I put it to myself was the big people were home. And it was an entirely different feeling. And many people, actually, I've never quite had this myself, but many people report DMT trips where they break in on an entity who is not pleased at all and demands to know how the hell you got there. And it's this, who are you? And then various sorts of dialogues go on, and one person described being then just hurled through all of time, like exploded back from this thing and going through all the recapitulation of ontogeny, and it's weird stuff. DMT trips, I mean, mine are always as I described, but some people report and these may be synergies with antidepressants or something like that, but apparently very stable and strange worlds. I mean, worlds with alien peoples and animals and cities and, very science fiction-y stuff. That's why this Bell's theorem, I don't think we use that word, but this non-locality that we talked about may have something to do with the phenomenon of the imagination. Like, it's occurred to me over the years that what we call imagination might simply be hyperdimensional perception, and you're actually seeing worlds and places that truly exist somewhere scattered through the galaxies like grains of sand, but no place you will ever contact or visit in the flesh, but that the data is somehow present. There seems to be some kind of tuning thing that needs to go on. Possibly with technology. I had a really weird experience years ago. I took LSD one evening with a bunch of people, and it was fairly casual and social, and smoked a bunch of weed, and this went on for a couple of hours, and it didn't really ever seem to come on, and it just seemed to be very light. And then I climbed on my motorcycle and went home and decided I would go to bed, and I decided that I would smoke one last joint before going to bed. And I had one of those stand-up electrical resistance heaters that you get in at the Salvation Army, if you're a poor student. And I turned it on as I started to smoke this joint, and it was badly wired, and it made this sound like, and as I began to listen to this sound, I went to lizard land, and I entered into this completely coherent thing which lasted for hours about this world inhabited by these intelligent reptilian beings. And we went through their art, their history, their theories of jewelry making, their philosophy, their polity, their science, their religion, their fashion, and it was like endless stuff about this very specific reptilian world. Well, then later I tried again. I took LSD with my arm around my heater, and had by then been preaching it in the streets. That this was and I could never really find my way back, which is a typical phenomenon of higher dimensional phase space. Ralph taught me, doing the reverse of what you did doesn't steer you back to where you started. You have to find your way forward through the matrix. Kat and I were in the Amazon in '76 taking ayahuasca. We got in with this certain group of people in Peru that took it every week. And, cultures have different ways of handling hassle. And in some cultures, it's confrontational. In other cultures, not. The way these Peruvian country folk operated was, if somebody was screwing up, nobody would ever say so. They would just talk about these people behind their back until the morphogenetic field of gossip was so strong that you would basically awaken to the problem. So there was a complex social situation going on in this ayahuasca circle, which was, there was a master shaman who we were apprenticed to, who was beloved by his neighborhood. But he had a nephew, a sobrino, who was a jerk. And this guy was, as Don Fidel said, ambitious. He dealt a little weed, he did a little pimping, he was just sort of an edge runner type of guy. And every Saturday night, we would all get together and take ayahuasca, about 30 of us. Older shamans, our guy, people from the neighborhood, and this sobrino, Don Jose. So I don't know what the real history of it was because I had just arrived on the scene, but these old guys would sing these icaros, these magical songs on ayahuasca that appear as colored tapestries in front of your eyes. And you know, they had soul, they were into it, and this guy would sing against them. I mean, it's the rudest thing you can possibly imagine. I mean, imagine if Lou Reed were trying to give a performance and the guy in the third row just launched into Old Man River and kept at it. I mean, in this town, I'm sure large guys would appear and say, "Sir." In Peru, it didn't work like that. They just kept singing. He kept singing. And it was clear that this is how it was going to be handled, that we had just divided into two separate entities here. Well, my wife was sitting next to me, and he was sitting across the room from us, the sobrino. And I had been watching him for a long time, and I was loaded to the gills, and I could see he would get up on his haunches, and he looked like a monkey. His face, it was uncanny. I mean, he looked like a monkey, and he also looked kind of like a jackal, a dog with long teeth. Kept going through these changes, and Kat leaned over to me and said something like, "This guy's an asshole." And I just said, let it slide. What do we know? Think of it as anthropology. But she wasn't having it. So after a while, he kept doing this, and at one point, and everybody in the room, every person in the room was bummed out, and they were looking at their laps. All eye contact was broken. It's actually, when I was a kid, I invented a word. The word is fardao, and it means the embarrassment you feel when someone else fucks up. And you happen to just be there, but somehow the aura of it is so strong. So the entire room is just awash in fardao. And the old guys are singing, and the guy is singing. So then at the end of a particularly intense clash of these two styles, my wife just looked across the room at this guy and put the whammy on him. And I saw these red arrows leave her eyes and like dotted lines go across them. And they move fairly slowly, more slowly than you could throw a ball or something. Well, when this line of red arrows got to this guy, he was knocked off his feet. He fell backwards with his legs in the air, and there was a big noise. And all the singing stopped, and everybody in the room looked up. And these three old shaman who were sitting behind Don Fidel, who I, to that point, had not heard speak any language but Quechua, one turned to the other and he says in Spanish, "Oh, the gringa sends the zabura." The girlfriend in the other dimension, the mushroom, once I said to her, I said, "What should I call you?" And she said, "Call me Dorothy." So I invoke it, and it comes, and then we're off. And sometimes it's easy and loving, and sometimes it's different. I remember one very epic trip I had where I had tossed out a big compost pile from growing mushrooms years ago in another country. Actually, it was a past life, I'm now recalling. But anyway, I tossed out this stuff, and this thing grew, this humongous mushroom. And I had taken mushrooms the previous Saturday. I had taken a full dose, which is 5 dried grams. So I thought, I want to take mushrooms again this Saturday, but I think I may have picked up a tolerance. So I'll just take 9 grams instead. And this is where the learning takes place. The mistakes, treasure your mistakes. So the thing, it's like I'm sitting there and suddenly I realize, oh my God, it's coming at me. It's 100 miles wide. It's 10 miles high, and it's just rolling toward me. It looks, and I barely had time to lay down. That's how fast it. And a voice said, you know, prepare. The storm is about to hit the beach, and I laid down, and it was like a tornado hitting. And at one point, I opened my eyes, and there was this woman in a full bondage getup with piercings and rubber panties and the whole thing. And I was lying there between her legs. She was standing upright, and she put her face right down next to mine, and she said, "Is it strong enough for you, asshole?" To which I replied, "Yes." And then she said, "They say it helps to close your eyes, cowboy." And I later, in thinking about that trip, I realized the reason the mushroom addressed me as cowboy is because that's most people mushrooms have met have been cowboys.